Be honest. When was the last time you felt really optimistic about the world? That's exactly why we are having this conversation. Welcome to Over Here, Over There, your podcast across borders, the transatlantic news and views. Today we'll talk a topic everyone needs and need more of: optimism and how to find it. So please listen to the end, there are excellent pointers coming. We recorded this discussion live at the beautiful Hotel Klostermaier in Icking, Germany. Many thanks for that, and please visit when you get a chance. And now, let's go. I know we've all been there. I've been there, sitting there at 4, 5 in the morning, doom scrolling, and it's all doom and gloom. But I've been wondering, where does it lead me? Where does it all go? And actually, looking on the more positive side, on the bright side of things, that's not just, nice and fluffy stuff and all that. It's a survival skill. So it is absolutely important, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah, well, I get caught in the doom scroll. I'm hoping that these experts across the way from me can get me out of that doom scroll. and that is another session with Dirk and Sabine Steffens, who have an important message for us all. And Dirk has just written a book on optimism, and so we want to highlight that and talk to him about that. Dirk, Sabine, welcome again. Great to have you here. Thanks for having us. Yeah. You've traveled to 120, 130 countries. You've seen a lot of good things and bad things. What are the brightest possibilities that you see in humanity? I know this is a huge question, and the darker moments. I mean, just something that an example will say.
Let's start with a small thing. I don't know whether we can hear it.
Yes.
Do you hear the chicken?
Yeah.
We're sitting in our Bavarian hometown. It's a village, actually. You see the Alps behind us. And what we hear there is a hen. Probably it just lay an egg. And hens celebrate it. So, and listening to it, it cheers us up. So maybe a start is try to find the grains of hope and optimism in every single day, because there is always. It's a question of perspective. And then you can widen the picture. And there's a very simple thought that lays the fundament to all this optimism. Because if you have a problem, how can you solve it? Whatever problem it is, do you solve it by giving up? The question is clear. The answer is obvious. You cannot solve any problem by not being optimistic. Because being optimistic is not that you just believe that things turn better by themselves. Being optimistic means you analyze what is the problem, you question yourself, is there a solution? And in best case, you ask yourself, can I be a part of the solution? That is optimism. Just try it. It doesn't mean that you always win, but to try it again and again and again, that's optimism.
So not giving up.
Not giving up. And just imagine when you were born, you fell 4,000 times before you learned to walk. Every
4,000 times.
4,000 times.
3 toddler.
Every toddler has to fall and stand up 4,000 times. So standing up again, trying it again and again and again is just deep down your nature. And actually is trying it again, being optimistic, is the idea of life. Just imagine a lion who would not even try to catch the antelope. Or imagine an antelope not even trying to escape. Trying it is optimism, and trying it is the engine of life. And it's in you, it's in every one of us. But we have to use this power that is the engine of life. And that's not so difficult if you think about it, because giving up and being a pessimistic person does not solve any problems.
Can I ask one about just that follow up on that? Is it then, so from the toddler, you got that statistic, which I found I've never heard, 4,000. So is it then the environmental factors that make you a pessimist? Or what happens that changes you then from that, getting up 4,000 times?
That's a complicated one, because it's both in us. So the not giving up part is in us. We are not quitters by birth. But there's also a thing that's also ingrained in our genes, that is we tend to perceive negative news more than positive news. And that does make sense from an evolutionary kind of view. Imagine you as an early human, maybe Homo erectus, maybe already sapiens, walking through the African savanna. You see a bug, an antelope, a tree, grass, the sun, some clouds, and a poisonous snake. What do you have to remember to survive that day? The poisonous snake. So that made a lot of sense to perceive negative things more strongly and to remember them more thoroughly than the positive thing. And that psychology calls this a negativity bias. And we all know that we are more in tuned to negative news than we are to positive ones, which is why we like to doom scroll. I did too, actually, but it also works the other way around. If you once get the algorithm to feed you positive news, so it's both in us. We are actually optimisms by nature, but we tend to over-perceive maybe negative news.
So it is both a choice and a disposition to be an optimist, is it?
And it's a laziness to be a pessimist, if I may say.
Yeah, a pessimist is good in analyzing the problem, but at that very point, you stop just thinking because you're not trying to find a solution. So being optimistic is a little bit more complicated and more complex because you not only have to see the problem, you have to think about the solution as well. So it's an additional step.
It's an attitude.
If it's an attitude, can a pessimist learn actually to become more optimistic? Is that something you can actually train?
To a certain degree, yes. But it's very, very important to highlight what Sabine just explained. So this negativity bias is an evolutionary fact. It helped our forefathers and foremothers to survive in the very old times, in the far past. It was very important, but it doesn't help you doing your filling your text forms and then the modern world, or to deal with an AI or something like that. So it's an ability that was very useful 200,000 years ago, but is a problem now. And the solution is think harder. It sounds, a Nobel Prize winner, Kahneman, wrote a book about it, and he calls it slow thinking and fast thinking. So fast thinking is what we do all the time. So you see something and you have an idea what to do. And it's very useful if you live in the Stone Age and a wild animal is coming into your cave. So there's no time for discussion and thinking and reflecting. So you have to act immediately to survive. That's fast thinking. Slow thinking is you think about climate change. There is no easy answer. You really have to analyze it. You have to think about it. You have to consider different ways and different solutions all the time. It's a painful and slow process, but that is what we call thinking. And you can even measure it. Thinking uses up a lot of calories. It's hard work. Look at our bodies, at our physics. We use 20% of all energy just up here in our brains. 20% for an organ that is, I don't know how heavy is a human brain. I don't know. It's not 20% of your body weight, at least. No, it's not. So it shows thinking is hard work, and we have to force ourselves to think harder. And that is one way out. And there's another easy way. If you algorithms and the social media, like the good news, you will get more and more and more. We did that, and it's overwhelming.
You may have saved me there. You may have saved me. In fact, we spoke with Arno Fratting, and he says to lose weight, he does mental exercises. He's joking. Once he was joking in a way, but then he wasn't joking, I guess.
Weighing chess players, you can really measure. If in a tournament, for example, in a chess tournament, you can measure that they lose more weight compared to people who are just sitting around and thinking about nothing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
We said that you traveled so much, around 120, 130 countries. Are there countries that are more optimistic?
Germany, of course. Most optimistic country. Didn't want to say. I didn't want to say. Famously, it's a cultural thing as well.
Are you been on a comedy tour as well as that book tour?
Yeah, German humor probably is it's the bestseller. It's a serious matter with German humor. Laugh like the Germans. Yes.
One of the shortest programs.
Why are you laughing now? Oh. Yes, it's a cultural. There's a cultural aspect to it too, as well. So we can learn a little bit to be more optimistic. We always, your example always is Brazil, right?
Yeah. Yeah, people in Brazil are very, very optimistic and in good humor. But also, what you always say, it's not so much about Germany and United States or Great Britain are wealthy countries, and people like us, what's their complaint about? We have a lot, and the prospects of becoming even better or richer are small. But if you are somebody living in a village somewhere in Brazil or Uganda, you have hope that you or your children might have it easier one day or might become a little wealthier. So it's much more about what the future holds that makes your attitude then. And that's why I think many people here are in a bad mood, because it's difficult to get even wealthier.
Want to make clear the dimension of that thought, because if you talk about democracy, democracy is the promise of a better future. It's in the core of democracy. If you do not believe that you can change things to the better, you do not vote, you do not demonstrate, you do not take part in public life. So democracy needs optimism. People who gave up will never be good Democrats. It's not possible. So you think how deep it goes into our behavior, and optimism is not just, I want to be it because it's more fun in life. No, it's very important for our future. Without optimism, you cannot solve problems like climate change, and you will lose the ability to live in a free society and be in a democratic society. Because if you do not believe that you can change the future, so come on, that's the end of everything.
You got to be a political consultant in the United States. You got to come over, spend some time. We need you, Dirk, over there. That was a great message. I thought, wow, just gold plate that.
Yeah, but it's so simple if you think about it.
But people get
why vote if you do not think things can become better? Democracy doesn't make any sense if you're pessimistic.
Yeah. I guess they just get so downtrodden from the media telling them the opposite.
Yeah.
They need voices like that.
But the media works, like Sabine explained earlier, due to that negativity bias. Every time our journalist colleagues in the news field, try to bring good news to the people are not interested. It's our brain, the evolution formed our brain in a way that we are more interested in bad news. And the so very old saying,
Bad news are good news and good news are no news.
it's sadly true.
Well, I mean, I know the red top newspaper tabloids, and probably both Germany and the United Kingdom, probably somewhere in the United States, they just live off of it.
Yes.
It's just bad news, bad news, bad news. There's hardly any good news, really, but they sell.
Just imagine a headline like in Germany, yesterday all trains arrived in time.
That would be.
Okay, that would be big news
I know. Wait, yeah, that's your job.
Right. See, laughing like a German. She cannot stop anymore.
Well, we got to say on that. I got the story, and I got to say this when she was 5 years old. Have you heard the story from?
No, but I'm really keen to hear it.
Now it's going to be very embarrassing.
He's flushing already. Must be a good story.
They're opening a new school or whatever.
Yeah.
They're opening a new school, and they brought in these dignitaries and these politicians in front to trumpet the good news, and in walks they bring in these youngsters from the kindergarten. And one of them was Claudia at 5 years old.
Happy as I could.
Happy, he's smiling. As she asked, she had that. And I guess it caught the attention of one of the politicians around here, who we won't name at this moment. But but everyone could see this happy young girl, at this event. And he turns around and says, so everybody can hear that life, and what is it? Life will teach you.
He'll teach you not to smile.
Oh yeah, very German attitude.
Life will teach you not to smile. When I heard that, my heart sank, and it just was stunning. I just like, well, there's a scar that won't heal for a good.
That's exactly the type of politician we need for a bright future.
Well, I mean, he probably tried to toughen me up, for what's about to come. But it's in my family, it was like, okay, that was a very, very German thing. Just check in regularly that he was wrong. Are you still smiling? Can you catch a smile here and there? Yeah. So yeah.
But come on, you're still smiling, and he's probably dead. See.
You're smiling now, Mr. Politician.
Who's smiling now?
Yeah. But talking about media consumption, I mean, the traditional media is being outsmarted by the social media a lot these days. They're quicker, but also there is the algorithm, and it leads so often into a rabbit hole. And so often it is about doom scrolling. So you told us before, one can outsmart it. Do you think that this is just for us to change the perception of social media and lifestyle? Or is that something that we need to be more aware of, that maybe it is a tool to be used to keep us in a bad mood? Because when you're in a bad mood, if you're grumpy, if you don't like what's going on, you're much more inclined to vote differently, more to the extremes maybe, just to go back and change everything and go back to square one, and democracy doesn't work. And is that something we have to watch out for, that we are being manipulated by social media maybe?
Difficult to say whether they do it on purpose. I think they just use the mechanism of the negativity bias because it makes things so easy. Extremistic parties, for example, it's so easy to say, they ruined our country, everything is going wrong. It's so easy to do that. But finding out solutions step by step, changing the world to become a better place, it's a very complex, not only complicated, but even complex thing to do, and it's less attractive. And here you come to the point where it's about narratives. So it's very, the story is more important than the facts. That's for a science journalist like us. It seems to be it seems to be bad news, but in the end, it's good news, because people never, in the history of human mankind, people never followed facts. They followed stories. Since the day when we started to sit down and gather around a campfire 100,000 years ago, it's stories. Just imagine we're in Bavaria, and every single little village we have these beautiful churches here. Did people build churches all around the world, the Christian world? And when they did so, and they were standing in this marvelous buildings, then they're wondering, the only thing is missing now is a religion. No, of course, it was the other way around. You first have the story, and if the story is convincing a lot of people, the story starts to change everything. Democracy, equal rights for women, and all these kinds of stories were crazy stories in the very beginning, but they were convincing. So like the slavery, you always like to talk about the end of slavery, for example. That was a big story as well. A fantastic story even.
Lots of stories that when people thought this will not be possible, change is not possible because it needs to stay like this, our economy works like this. And then if you think about it, lot has been changed, like women's rights, like slavery. Things that have not seemed possible before are possible if the story is good enough.
Right. In your book, what would you say, what's the message, what are you trying to accomplish with the book? And I'll just say also to our English-speaking audiences, we're hoping, I hope Penguin's listening, hope to see it in English very soon.
We come from the field of natural science, and so we checked out the facts. Is it really doomsday nowadays? It feels like that. Because if you look at climate change, extinction of species and all these subjects, it really seems to be possible that we are at the brink of extinction of our own species. It is a possibility, yes, but it's not necessarily happening. Because if you, for example, climate change, in Germany, you always have the feeling nothing is going forward. We do not achieve anything. But if you look at the real numbers, the opposite is true. In Germany, nowadays, more than 60% of all the electricity comes out of renewables. In the entire world, when we did research on that number, we were stunned by that number. In the last year, of all new energy plants around the world, more than 90% were renewables. Why? Because the tipping point has been reached. It's just cheaper from an economic point of view. It makes more sense to build new power plants on the basis of renewable energies than burning more coal and more oil. The public discussion, if you listen to what Donald Trump does or Putin does or what happens in other countries or China or something like that, you get the impression we are stepping backwards, but it's not true. It's really not true. So many things like crime, lifespan, warfare, all the numbers in the history of mankind. Right now, we have the best numbers ever in the history of mankind, but it feels as if it's doomsday, and that's what we are talking about. The facts speak a completely different language than our emotions.
And what we are always trying to tell in our documentaries, in our podcasts, that there is hope, that we have more solutions than problems. That's actually the main message, and so the way we think about optimism isn't naive or just wishful thinking. It's based on meeting so many people all around the world, talking to experts. The solutions are here. We just need to implement them. And if we look into nature, there are so many positive stories. There's so much resilience still in this world, on this planet, that if we just leave nature alone at some parts and try to protect it a little better, many things will get better by themselves. Our favorite story is the defecating blue whale.
Yes. Defecating whales. That's an amazing story.
Ever heard about that whale poo can save your day?
The whale pump? No. The big whales, like blue whales, humpbacks, or animals like that, they feed down there, they feed plankton in the depths. Yeah. And then they come up and there they defecate. Probably it's too difficult to do that with a pressure of 500 meters water against you. So why ever, they defecate on the surface, which is good news because this is a fertilizer for the phytoplankton. Yeah. And it really, the population, the numbers of phytoplankton explodes when they are fertilized like that. And we're talking about billions, trillions, and even more than that. And when they do that, in the water, they do the same thing that trees do on land. So they take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and they release oxygen. And when these little phytoplankton dies down, they go down to the ground, and the greenhouse gas is gone for a long, long time. And we're talking about big numbers, up to 37 billion tons a year. That is 4 times the amount that the entire Amazon rainforest can store. So, make it in a simple line. Pooping whales can solve the climate problem, at least a big part of it. Up to 40% of the anthropogene emissions per year. That's a big number. So stop killing whales and nature will help us solving our problems. And there are many, many processes like that.
Is that in your book as well?
Yes, all is well. Yeah.
It's also on YouTube, actually.
It's on YouTube.
Yes.
Oh,
In German, though.
Sure.
But there are subtitles everywhere.
AI will give us a good...
It's a cool story. One of our favorite stories, but there are many of these stories that give us hope and reason for optimism.
What about the bees? I mean, that's a famous saying. Once the bees disappear, humankind will die out as well.
All of us have heard about the bees dying, right?
Yes.
Have you heard about the bees coming back?
No.
See? But it's happening.
Negativity bias.
Good news, Anna. Good. The EU just prohibited the
neonicotinoids. Yes. That's a chemical that really, it makes you nuts. The brain of the bees do not work anymore. They do not find help.
Okay.
So
They missed the hive.
must be expert, but I think the bees are doing better and coming back. So,
Yeah.
But you are generally right. If the bees die, the humans will die too.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, it's simplifying in terms of without biodiversity, we are doomed. That's for sure.
Well, that layer of pollination across the world, if they were to go, we're in big trouble.
We are big trouble. This chemical is forbidden in the European Union. And since then, the bees are thriving a little bit better than they did before. Good news. But bad news make it to the headlines, and good news don't.
As we all know, being a journalist
So
myself.
there are a million facts from natural science that prove what Sabine said. We have more solutions than problems. It feels differently, we know that, but that's a question of what stories do we tell each other. If we talk about everything is doomed, everything is going down, we will not make it, and if this is the mood, it will happen. Future will be as if we talk about it today.
So we have to break the cycle of doom scrolling, of thinking negative of the possibilities of the future. And then by being more optimistic, we find solutions, and then we can save the world, basically.
I've got this answer. You got to read Dirk's book.
Yes.
That's what you got to do.
Yes. I'm gonna. I will.
The future is not a written book. It's an open end, and we have to be a little bit more brave. Not knowing what will happen in the future is an opportunity, because if you would know, there is no opportunity. And imagine, just remember when John F. Kennedy, this moon speech, Thaber's moon speech, when he said we will bring a man to the moon before the end of this decade. The sentence from that speech I like most is, we are not doing it because it is easy. We are doing it
Because it's hard.
because it is hard. That's the main sentence, because that sentence turned an engineering challenge into a national adventure.
Yeah.
It changed everything.
Yeah. No. I have that on my phone. I listen to it every so often. No, really, it gives me, that's one of those optimistic speeches. When I need a lift, that's one of the things I know, or Martin Luther King, speeches like that.
And it was truthful. It wasn't even not only optimistic, it was truthful. And it wasn't like
Yeah, was not sugarcoating anything.
They said it's going to be hard, but he set a goal.
Actually, it was salt coating, because it will be hard, like Churchill did, with his Rajas.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you very much. We really appreciated that. And we like to encourage people to go to Dirk and Sabine's work. They are just super science TV journalists that do great work around the world in many countries.
Try and catch them live if you have a chance.
And just the name of your book is
Hopefully optimistic, in German, Hoffnungslos Optimistisch.
So look out for it, and
Definitely.
you won't be disappointed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so just like to thank our guests again, Sabine and Dirk Steffens. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. And don't miss our next episode. So thank you very much for tuning in.
bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.